We are following the fallout from another hugely controversial airstrike. Officials in Qatar say a legal team is looking at ways to hold Israel's prime minister responsible for yesterday's airstrike on the Gulf state's capital. The Israeli strike targeted Hamas leaders in Doha. The Palestinian militant group says 5 of its members were killed, but it claims the attempt to assassinate its ceasefire negotiating team failed. Qatar has condemned the action as cowardly and a flagrant violation of international law, while Canada says it risks further conflict across the Middle East. We do want to stay on this story, and for that we'll bring in Hala Rharrit. She is a former U.S. State Department official. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So we know that Qatar is a key American regional ally and played a crucial role in negotiating for ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas during the several years in which we've seen this most recent conflict continue. And the Trump administration said they did receive a warning of the attack from the U.S. military just before it took place. So do you think the recent attacks will change that dynamic between Doha and Washington?
Absolutely. There's no way that it wouldn't. For your audience, the U.S. and Qatar have a security pact. It's a long-standing security agreement. And the role of the United States with Qatar is to protect it, is to serve as its defense. There is a U.S. airbase in Doha, Al Udeid Air Base. There are significant amounts of military assistance that the U.S. provides to Qatar, that Qatar buys from the U.S. And the whole point is that it is safe in a very turbulent region. And what this has shown is the absolute opposite. The Qataris are extremely angry, as we've heard from their own foreign minister, that they did not get prior warning from the White House, as it was said from the White House podium. They were told as the attack was taking place. And so now I think, and as a diplomat that myself served at the U.S. Embassy in Doha, I can only imagine how betrayed the Qataris feel at the moment that they actually were hosting Hamas as a means of negotiations on behalf of the United States and of the Israelis. And now this has come back to bite them. So I think this is going to cause a major revaluation in the strategic alliance. And for me as an American diplomat, it's quite tragic because this goes very much against U.S. interests and the strong relationship that the U.S. has built with Qatar over the years.
And to the end of that relationship, in terms of reaction that we saw from the White House, it said that the attack doesn't advance Israel or America's goals in the region, but also suggested the target was legitimate. Although we did hear from the president that he said he was very unhappy with the attacks. I mean, does that go far enough in order to allow for this relationship to see a way to repair it?
Let's just be clear. Netanyahu is trying to kill diplomacy. When you are trying to kill the negotiators, there's no diplomatic solution to the conflict. And that is what Netanyahu is trying to do. President Trump has been trying to push, at least in public, as we've all been hearing the rhetoric coming out of the White House, a deal, a ceasefire deal. And whenever we get a little bit close, Israel perpetuates another attack, and now against Hamas leadership. If you kill the negotiators, there's no possible deal. If you try to kill the negotiators, there's also no possible deal. If you infuriate the mediator, not even the negotiators, but the actual mediators that are trying to put both sides together, you are trying to kill diplomacy. And so now the White House has to decide what it's going to do. Is it going to continue to support a rogue leader? And I have to say, I find it interesting how your ministers just right now in the press conference referred to Putin in very strong and ardent words of condemnation, but did not have the same words for Netanyahu. And as a former diplomat that is steeped in international law, we should be using the same terminology. He also cannot be trusted, as Putin cannot be trusted when you violate international law. And so now the White House is going to have to come to a reckoning about what it's going to do with Netanyahu when he decides to attack a U.S. non-major ally, which Qatar is.
You know, I'm glad that you referenced, of course, what we heard from our Foreign Affairs Minister, Anita Anand, because I did want to ask you about that specifically. We heard remarks from her where she said that Canada is evaluating the relationship with Israel in the wake of its attack on the Hamas leaders in Qatar. And also we saw that this is, of course, the month where many nations, including Canada, is set to recognize Palestinian statehood. And she said that she is in a lot of conversation in seeing whether or not there is the demilitarization, a leaning towards democracy and all of this, but continues to evaluate the relationship with Israel. What did you make of those remarks?
I think I made of those remarks what I hope Canadians made of those remarks is just hearing the blatant double standard. And it's quite disappointing, to be quite frank. Again, I am someone that has been steeped in international law, someone that has been steeped in US law. And when you have any nation that violates the sovereignty of another nation, we have to have the same principles. You cannot have certain principles when Russia commits an act of aggression in Polish airspace, but not have the same standards set on the Israelis with the Qataris. It's that kills the rules-based order. That allows any rogue state to take any action, and that hurts us. That hurts us as citizens in the West, and it also shows how much the West does not value the rules-based order when we behave this way. So I would hope that Canadians would also hold their ministers accountable. Now, the only solution that we are certain of is a diplomatic solution. There is no end game. I want to remind your audiences that in the last 24 hours, 5 more Palestinians died of starvation in Gaza, including a child that died of famine. All of this is still happening while the siege is underway, while Palestinians are getting bombarded, while international laws are getting violated. And this does not advance any type of solution. It does not advance the hostages getting released, the Israeli hostages, I mean. The families of the hostages are irate at Netanyahu's actions of bombing Qatar, and now he just bombed Yemen. This has to end. And I think it's clear that it comes to us as citizens to say enough. Evaluating when it comes to violations of international law is not sufficient. We need action, arms embargoes, economic isolation, actions that actually will yield change, not simply weak rhetoric such as words of evaluating the relationship. It's not strong enough at this point.
Thank you so much for your analysis. Unfortunately, I have to leave our discussion there, but we appreciate your time. That is Hala Rharrit. She is a former U.S. State Department official. Thank you.
Thank you.